Welcome back to the Capture Your Confidence podcast. We are here with a very dear friend and a super special guest, Misty Linn, who is an investor, a budding restaurateur. She is a realtor, and I have had the joy of being able to know her for the last couple of years. And when I tell you that the confidence story on this one is one that you need to hear, I'm underselling it. So Misty, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
So you have a very interesting origin story into entrepreneurship. So can you tell me a little bit about what your life was like growing up that sort of like led you into entrepreneurship?
Sure. How far back do we want to go?
I mean, as far back as you feel necessary.
Well, my mom had me at a very young age. So we kind of grew up together. You know, she had me when she was 16 and spent time with grandma while mom was working. And then we moved into project housing. So we grew up together and basically, kid raising a kid. So I think that entrepreneurship really was ingrained in me to not be who my parents were. So for me, it was always looking for something to take me outside of those four walls. I never wanted to struggle with money. I never wanted to, I saw my mom struggling financially and also struggling to always make ends meet on someone else's time. And, it was really driven into me to get through school, don't get pregnant, and that's it.
Sorry, high standards for mom. Thank you.
Yeah. So it was, for me, it was, I had to get out of that environment and I wanted better for myself. I wanted, better for my mom. It was ingrained in me always to help mom out, whether that was doing laundry, the dishes, cleaning the house. She was working multiple jobs. The neighbors would come over, make sure I ate dinner. So it was definitely, they say raised by a village. I felt at that time I was being raised by a village.
And, I'm sure that there were so many times where you could have looked at the way that you grew up and thought, this is all that I'll ever have. But I am interested in hearing your perspective on, because it's not like your mom was telling you, oh, you can be so much more. Like your mom was focused on surviving too. But for some reason in your mind, there was always this message of, it doesn't have to be this way for me. And so can you talk to me about that mindset and whether you think that was something that you cultivated or if it was just something that was like deeply ingrained in you?
So it was fourth grade. One of my teachers, I saw her leaving school and she had a Volvo. And I was like, man, that is a nice car. And then I talked to her about her car. I said, oh, I saw you in your car. The car's really nice. And she's like, oh, kind of played it off like that old thing. And I knew there was more out there than what we were living, because I saw mom struggling and striving for more. So what more was she striving for? And to see, your teachers, to see my dad my grandfather owned his own business, Kirby Beer Coil Service. So he cleaned beer lines and I would go to work with dad. He had big accounts like SeaWorld, Geauga Lake. And we would go there at 5:30 in the morning before the parks open to clean all the beer lines. So I'm running around the parks and it felt like such a big, grand world that in where I grew up, it's like, felt very small and very uninspiring. So I knew that there was something better out there. And I always thought you just have to make money to get it.
I love that. We talk a lot about exposure and being able to see it, to be able to appreciate that it's potentially out there and that you can grow into it. And so I love that story because that's just highlighting that you had to see it.
And everybody has this moment in time where they realize, oh, my view of the world is limited. And I think it's really cool that you recall that and that it's stuck with you all this time. And I'm sure there are so many things in adulthood that flash you back to that memory, whether you're in a phase of your life where you're really stretching yourself or you are in front of somebody who's built a business even bigger than yours and you're like, ooh, the world's bigger than I realized, right? And so I'm sure that flashback happens for you all the time, but I just think it's really special that that is a memory. And that teacher it was insignificant to that teacher, but it was so significant to you.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. So you were told don't get pregnant and graduate high school. But so then how did all of this entrepreneurship stuff happen for you?
So I started working as a salad girl at, again, a bar restaurant that my dad cleaned beer lines at. They hired me at the age of 15. I was a salad girl. So tickets would come in for salads. I put all the salads together and I push them down the line. So that working, I love that busyness and the working. And I was like, okay, if I work And really, I started very early calculating my dollar per hour of like, okay, if I work this many hours, I can make this much money. And, that's going to college too was a big thing for me personally, because nobody in my entire family went to college. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be the first one to graduate from college. And then I would sit in college classes. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I mean, I don't care about algebra or, any of the things you had to do to get that degree. So again, you're sitting there, and I took night classes because I worked during the day, and thinking I could be making so much more money if I just stayed at work, So it was just that drive to look at, okay, money was made, and that's helping me. It's helping me get a car. It's helping me buy the clothes that I want. It's helping me do these things next step to take me to the next level.
Okay. And so, there had to have been an experience where you stopped focusing on trading your time for money, and you started looking at money as a thing that you didn't necessarily have to exactly trade your time for. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about how you got into real estate and sort of when that shift happened.
Yeah, the shift happened. I worked at Tremont Elementary. I took care of kids with behavioral disorders. And, that the public school system is not set up for kids with behavioral disorders and autism to all be in the same room and just be divided by a small divider. Mm-hmm. So it felt very chaotic for me in that environment. I was responsible for the safety of all these kids, and, kids are setting off each other, throwing pencils at each other, stabbing each other with them. And then there was a little room that we were supposed to basket hold the child and then take the child back to the padded room. And I'm like, this girl came from the projects of Akron, Ohio, and I should not be responsible for these children. So I had to get out and do something else. Yeah. I knew I was helping the kids. I still talk to 2 of them today. Wow. That's cool. But for me, it was not anything that I saw growing or anything that could amount to anything bigger than that, than what I was doing. Yeah. So I had a friend moving from Chicago to Columbus, and I went and looked at houses with her. And I thought, this is really cool. Fell in love with her broker at the time, Bruce Stolley. He had been in the business at that time for 23 years. So he was established. He drove the Mercedes. He was, very polished. And I just started going to his open houses, and he asked me what was I doing at his open houses? He said, I see you more than I see half my agents. And I said, I just love what you do. I think it's so cool. And he's like, well, go take the classes. And I was like, I already looked it up. You have to kind of have money to even get started in real estate. And he's like, that's not true at all. He said, I'll help you. I'll mentor you. And I went to the classes in summer of 2006. I just pretended like I was a real estate agent. I mean, pretended like I bought a blazer, pretended. And I didn't coach Special Olympics that summer. I really, truly was like, okay, I'm going to be a real estate agent, and failure is not an option in this, because there was not one person on my side of saying, this is such a great idea for you.
Okay. So many things here. Let's pause you here. So did you graduate college?
Nope.
No. Okay. So you left.
Left.
Okay.
I have math is the only thing keeping me back from a degree. I'm refusing to do it.
Okay. So how old are you at this point when you go to this initial open house and you meet him?
So 2006, I was 31.
Okay. And you had been working from the time you left college.
Oh yeah.
I've
worked since 15. Yeah.
And so just kind of the normal grind, just doing different things, working at the school and that sort of thing. So I love this because I think it's important to highlight you were literally doing something for 10 years and decided to make a pivot.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners struggle with that concept. Like, there's no way
it's too late.
Yeah.
It was really the age of 30. I looked in the mirror at myself and I said, this is not what my plan was. Number one, I thought I'd have a child by 30. I was not happy in my relationship. I was not happy with my job. And it felt very much like, okay, your alarm's set, you wake up, you go do this thing, and you do that thing, and you do that thing, we're back in bed, and my life felt very uninspiring for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another really special thing about this story is that you didn't really know when you were going to those open houses that you were going to become a realtor, but there was something that was calling you and you just kept showing up. And I think a lot of people stop themselves from following the curiosity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it takes a really confident person, or a person who's just at least willing to explore. Like, there's no reason, you have no earthly reason to go to this open house.
No.
Like, you're not looking for a house.
Yeah.
You're not, like, you keep showing up simply because you're curious. And I think that's a really strong marker of someone who's really worked on building confidence.
Yeah.
Because it takes confidence to show up in a room. You're like, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I'm going to show up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, too, a testament to if you're putting the right energy out there. I mean, shout out to who's the person? Bruce,
yeah.
Right? Shout out to Bruce, who, if you're putting out that energy, it's going to attract like-minded energy and people.
And he could have done 1,000 things. He could have been like, hey, if you're not going to buy a house, you can't be coming to my open house.
Right.
He could have, but instead he chose the path of mentorship. And I think that's so beautiful that you had somebody who wasn't emotionally invested in you, but decided to become invested in you.
Yeah. No, he very much was open to that and encouraged me to just go take the test, just do it, because I was my own roadblock. You know, I was the one I looked up Hondros. I'm like, okay, cost that much. I think I could work an extra couple shifts. I was also bartending at PK Orion's on Fridays and Saturdays. I could pull up another couple shifts and pay for this. And so he was the one that was like, just go do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go do it. And test taking was that was my roadblock.
Yeah.
What if I do all these classes, take all the classes, I do all the things, I can't pass this test. I heard the test so hard. And because I was not a great student. So that to me was triggering of like, I was never a great student. I did what I had to do to get by. And so now I'm going to actually pay for a class and then go take this test that is, you know, reliant on my next chapter. So that was a huge roadblock for me. And mindset was, go do it. Let's prove all these people wrong.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you take the test, you pass, and then what are we doing?
Take the test, I pass. My neighbor, her and her husband were moving to Atlanta. I listed their condo and did all the things. I got all the flyers out in the front in the box. It was perfect. And
nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it. Guy was running by. I lived next door. He called me and he said, hey, I'm really interested in this condo. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, I'm here right now if you want to go look at it. So he's like, because I knew he had the flyer in his hand, so he had to be nearby. He said, I was running by. I can run up there, you know, quickly. So I showed it to him. I had both sides of that deal. And I thought, this is it. It was not easy. Trust me. Both sides of that deal was absolute hell. There was an iron burn underneath the bed. So when they moved their bed, the iron burn was exposed, but not disclosed by my client. So he wanted all new carpeting. So it was not easy, but it was, when you get that first commission check of that, it feels like success. I felt like, okay, this is 7 months of me working for the school district.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the fear of taxes coming out and the fear of, you know, when's the next one coming? So I set myself up on monthly goals. If you have one closing a month, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it was small goals to achieve bigger goals.
And so you get this momentum and you're in real estate, which, by the way, she's in real estate at like the worst possible time to get into real estate.
The worst possible.
She gets licensed in 2006 and then like the market absolutely disintegrates in 2008, but you stay through things. And then let's talk about that, not necessarily transition, but the addition of real estate investing on top of being a realtor. So tell me like how investing sort of moved into the circle for you.
So it truly was the downturn of the market.
Yeah.
I was at a networking event and I met some people that were working short sales and foreclosures. They were talking about how busy they were. There was a different level of energy in the conversation of they were excited. And I'm like, I'm dying over here. Like, I don't know.
What are you drinking?
Right. I thought so. Okay. I moved back to Akron. I run my parents' bar. I mean, so I was totally going to take myself out of the game. And that conversation right there is what shifted my mind of like, they're doing it and how can I help? So called them and I said, who is your listing agent on the short sales. First, I had to go research what short sales. I knew what foreclosures were. Short sales were a little confusing for me. So I called them and I said, who's the listing agent once you create this hardship for the person that has engaged with this attorney and you're negotiating that, then who's the listing agent on the back end? And they're like, whoever's in the neighborhood, like there's no like one person. What if you had the one person to go to? That could be that one person. So I did. I helped negotiate short sales. Very depressing job because you're creating a hardship on why this person cannot pay their mortgage anymore. And you're taking the worst case of they, health reasons, they've lost their spouse, they've lost their job, they were in a balloon that's now 12 to 14%, their mortgage has changed. So it's always something negative that you're then trying to sell to the bank to lessen what their note is. So I did that for about a year and a half. And that shifted my mind in real estate completely because I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, okay, our market is not going to stay this way. If you study the market, it ebbs and flows, comes and goes. And it was that point where I'm like, real estate is not just about putting people in my car, driving them around to look at the houses they want to see, or putting a sign in the yard and listing the property. I'm looking at the numbers of it. I'm like, when this market comes back, there's money to be made here. And Old Town East for me was a huge mind shift because driving around Old Town East, I'm looking at these houses and I'm like, there's not a chance in hell that these big, beautiful brick homes are going to stay blighted and boarded up, or families are living on the first floor because they can't afford the second and third floor. So there's going to be a shift and I want to be a part of that shift. So I started working with investors because I had the inventory. I knew, okay, the bank's going to do the short sale. So I had inventory I could market and then started working with investors. And working with investors, I learned that it's a numbers game. It was all about numbers. It's not an emotional transaction whatsoever. So when they're rehabbing these properties and then I'm going back to list the property, I'm like, what the hell happened in here? Who picked out the flooring? Who picked out your light fixtures? So it's numbers for them. It's like, I got these light fixtures, 2-pack at Lowe's for, $19.99. I'm like, yeah, I see it. Right. So, yeah. So that's when I started doing some design work for investors. I'm like, if you give me your lighting budget, I promise I can pick out better light fixtures than what you're putting in here. Because when you want to do 30 of these houses over and over again, I can't sell 30 of what's going on in here.
Yeah.
So that's what shifted.
So first you're brokering investment deals for other investors. Then you're advising on ways to make the investments go even better. And talk to me about the time period where you realize like, oh shoot, I should be doing this for me.
I was sitting at a closing table and shout out to Lori Ferrante. She was with Fund That Flip at the time. And her and I were talking and she's like, girl, I work with half your investors you're making a lot of money for. And why aren't you doing it? And I said, it's money. For me, it's a financial thing of like, who's going to lend me the money? I haven't done one of these before. And she said, we'll lend to you. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So
I love this. I mean, first of all, it's like a woman taking a chance on another woman.
We love
her.
it. We love it when a woman gets in a room and is like, hey, girlie, I think you should do this.
Yes. And then the other thing that came out several times in your journey is you were finding holes and then adding value. Like you were looking to help other people.
Yeah.
And you even said it. You said, oh, how can I help? Right. So it's just this abundance mindset. There's enough for everybody. How can I go in and help? Because if you grow, we all grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's so prevalent.
I also want to brag on Misty because I know her better than a lot of people do. And I will tell you that this is a mentality that is woven in every arm of her business, right? When she thinks about, oh, how can I give jobs to people who have a hard time getting jobs? How can I create housing for people who have a hard time finding housing? Like everything that she does is laced with this idea of like, well, how can we make it helpful? And I think it's really beautiful. And people have a lot of assumptions about real estate investors that they're the scum of the earth, that they don't care about their people. And it just couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So I digress. I had to brag on that because I want people to know. I just need the people to know. She's so kind-hearted.
Yeah. So what year is this when they lend to you and you are now starting to do the investing yourself?
It was 2012.
Okay.
So you start investing and then what happens?
So I started investing, and my first property I invested I ended up living there for 3 years to recoup my losses. So yeah, it was a property in Old Town. Ended up getting it for $23,000, which is unheard of today. But it was added on to 4 different times throughout the lifespan of the house. The house was originally built in 1910. I was the 5th owner of the property. So I was keeping it as a double, even though it very much could have lived like a single family, but I was like, oh, live on the first floor, we'll house hack it. The porch sill plates snapped and collapsed the 2nd floor. So I can still hear my contractor, the tone in his voice of calling me. I thought somebody died in the house. I thought somebody cut their arm off. I didn't know what happened. He's like, you got to get over here right away. So when I went to the property, I was standing in the dining room area and I could look all the way up to the 3rd floor. And it was a moment of like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, same question. So
what do you think?
Right. So I said, well, I think the universe has told me to make this a single family because that cuts out a kitchen, cuts out a bathroom. So that could cut the cost of what it's going to take to repair the house. So converted it into a single family, ended up living there for 3 years, sold it, and people that bought it from me still live there.
Wow. And what I love about this too is you said, oh, I think the universe is telling me it should be a single house. A lot of people would say, I think the universe is telling me I need to get out of this game.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to be doing this. This was a mistake. Let me go back to doing what I was doing. But I think you had a history at this point of 20 years of kind of figuring it out as you go and trusting in yourself and building your confidence so that the most natural thing that came out was like, oh, we just pivot and now it's a single family home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here we are, 500 flips later, no lie. And you have multiple businesses now. Can you talk to me about, after having gone through this process of being like a really seasoned real estate investor, to then diversifying the way that you're running business and opening the bar or starting your construction company? Like, how did all of those things come to pass for you?
So one thing I did learn in 2008, 9, going through the people's hardships and stuff, is there was no diversification in any of their income, right? So either they were investors in real estate and they were losing their whole portfolio because they only had it in real estate. So they have one stream of income. So for me, I'm like, I have to diversify my income streams. So when I seen the opportunity to open District West, that was a need for our community. It's for the LGBTQ plus community. When COVID happened and you're telling people to stay inside their homes, not everyone's home is safe to stay in. And I see my friends, I see family that are in their basements with ring lights and, trying to still perform because that's their only source of income. So the space that I looked at, I knew one of the girls that had worked there, and I happened to run into her on a walk at Franklin Park. And I asked her, I said, what do you think Jason's doing with the hookah bar? She goes, we were just talking about that. He has to sell it. And I said, well, see what he wants to sell it for. I kind of have an idea. And that then sparked the bar. He already had the liquor license. He already had the lease. So I was like, all I have to do is transform the interior of the space, which the construction side, I know of that. And then, working with another designer to help design that space. And then we turned that space in 3 weeks. And for me looking at it, I'm like, you guys got this in 3 weeks? What's the problem?
Crazy person.
Your confidence is bleeding onto them.
And it was like, Misty, we have to move the plumbing. We have to move. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're going to have some really late nights here. So. Yeah.
So you open District West and then, down the road, you're doing all of these flips, whether they're your flips or you're working with investors and you're sort of like helping mentor and guide the process for them. Talk to me about how the construction company really started.
Construction company was a twofold, mind shift for me. When I started to look at my business in doing the flips and construction, where am I losing the money? And why are these taking so damn long? So it was the contractors, the GC, the person running the show. So I needed to take control of that because I cannot keep losing money in the construction side of things, because this GC doesn't care. I mean, he's paid on draws. He'll do enough to get his draw, and then he pulls back, and I'm like, okay, no one's been at the house all week. And, recently I've moved my mom here, and her house, she's like, just put a for sale sign in the yard. I'm like, absolutely not. We're maximizing the value of your property. This is it. This is your retirement. So I was renovating my mom's house, and my dad still living in Akron. He's like, I got it. It's 2 hours away from me. So he ran that project, and I would go, maybe once a month. I'd pop in and be like, wow, this is nice.
not bad.
It's getting done.
Okay, Dad.
Right. All right, Dad. His attention to detail, his management skills. My dad was ended up being in the car business. And so going from running my grandfather's business, we lost that business, and then he went into car sales. So when looking at that skill set he had, I was like, you should come and check out and see what I have going on in Columbus and walk some of the properties I have. So he came up a Sunday, and then he came up another Sunday, and every Sunday Dad would just pop up. And I'm like, all right, this is the Sunday thing. And he loved it. And his wife, Maria, said, I have not seen your dad this excited about something in a very long time. It's like you've given him life again. So Dad he semi-retired from the car business. So he could spend like Monday, Tuesday, and then he would leave on Wednesday. Well, that quickly turned into full retirement, and he now lives Monday through Friday in one of my rentals and runs a whole construction crew.
Nice.
Yeah. And so not only does your dad work for your construction company, but so does your stepmom, so does your brother-in-law, so does your sister.
Yeah.
Like, how in the world is that going for you?
Well, let me tell you, when you have your entire family on your payroll, it's a little stressful.
Right? Pressure. Well, I mean, that's the point. Like,
pressure, yeah.
There's so much pressure to like continue to keep the engine going, because it's one thing to be in charge of someone else's livelihood. It's another to be in charge of your entire extended family's livelihood too.
Yeah.
So much pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. And, it's one thing I will say is in business, and when you're running your own business, trust is a huge thing. So when your bridge has been burnt down by other people that you trusted or that you went into business with, I know for sure my dad's not going to screw me over. My brother-in-law, 100% is not going to screw me over. My sister is doing anything and everything she possibly can, and also running 3 kids. Raising 3 kids, not running them.
They're like,
raising, running.
Yeah.
So for me, the stress of the trust has been alleviated. The stress now is, damn, we got to keep this ship running because I'm feeding all these mouths. So if one thing fails and, Dad's paycheck isn't coming through, it's like, well, what are we doing? So it is stressful, but it's a shift in the stress of, I trust that my people are doing what they're going to do, that they're supposed to be doing. And if they don't, they communicate with me. They have questions. I walk property still at least twice a week. I'm still very much involved. I would eventually, very soon, like to pull myself out of the construction completely, because they know what to expect. And they're very quickly learning that. So.
Yeah. I mean, and what a great lesson, because entrepreneurship is stressful
no
matter what situation you're in. Right. Yeah. And so you have to kind of embrace that that's part of it.
Yeah.
And choose what type of stress makes the most sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So knowing all of this about your journey and your story, can you tell us what role confidence plays in being able to manage this level of pressure?
Confidence, I think, is everything. Confidence, the word confidence to me means mindset, period. And there are days where I wake up and I'm shitting on my own self. And that is where I feel my everything shift. I can't do this anymore. Why am I here? This, everyone needs to go get a 9-to-5 job and leave me alone.
Right? Not with me.
Right. Not with me. Get off my payroll. But the mindset then shifts into get your ass up. My Peloton and I are good buddies. We, I can feel like I could spin it out, I say. But the mindset is that failure is not an option. That's huge for me. And that has been from, I don't even know how or when that started, but it has been very early for me is I'm going to do this and it's not an option to fail.
Yeah.
I actually think it came when I shifted into real estate because everyone was, you're going to fail. There's no reason. What are you doing this? No one in your family. My dad had recently owned his home. My grandmother owned her home just because it was passed down from a friend of hers that she took care of. So, you have two people that own their home within your immediate family. It's like, yeah, I don't really know anything about real estate, but I know I'm going to do this and I'm going to go wholeheartedly into it, and failure is not an option for me.
Yeah. And that energy was consistent throughout. And with that allows different and bigger opportunities to come.
Yeah.
Because I think an important part of your story is 10 years ago, you probably didn't have the knowledge. You couldn't do the construction company, right? But now, because that energy has stayed consistent, like bigger and better things come with it over time. And so it really is a journey.
It is a journey. And educating yourself, the construction company, you think that, what do I have any business doing in construction? But I can tell you, I've been walking properties for the past 19 years and looking at construction and looking at how it is ran and the things not to do and the things to do differently. So,
yeah, I love that. We've had a handful of guests who do things that are completely out of their wheelhouse. And it's, the audacity to think that you could do that and then to really shift it and say, oh, wait, no, actually, I do have the skill set to do this.
Yeah. So what's next for Misty Linn?
Well, I am launching another restaurant. So that's next. Our launch date is sometime in July.
Nice.
So,
and this is in Columbus.
It's in Columbus.
Okay. I love that. I'm a real estate person, and this is the first time I'm learning a launch date. I have work to do.
We have some things to talk about. So that's that, the restaurant space. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it until you're in that space. And I realized I enjoy people enjoying themselves. So whether that is good food, having a cocktail, having a good conversation with somebody, having a comfortable space that you feel comfortable and confident in, no matter who you are, to have the space to thrive in that's important to me. So this opportunity came to me from somebody that's been friends and followed me for a very long time, kind of saw what went down with the eatery, and was an opportunity. So they contacted me, and it's happening pretty quickly, but I'm excited about it. And it's going to be another, all-inclusive space for everybody to come to.
Love it.
Well, we so enjoy being able to hear the story and to share so much of what you've gone through with people who probably just would never know by looking at you from the outside. So I appreciate your candor and your willingness to tell your story today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I know our audience picked up so many good nuggets.
Good.
So
Good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.